Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As you can probably hear, I am under the weather a little bit, but I still have to film. There's some exciting things happening, so there will be a few videos filmed during the same time just to finish out some videos, do new ones. But yeah, I just wanted to share with you guys a few of these things. So today's topic is going to be gardening terms. I realize a lot of people don't know what a lot of these things mean. And I do talk about them sometimes, and sometimes I go into detail. Sometimes I don't. So yeah, this video is really about just gardening terms in general. I know I did talk about a few in my urban gardening video. You can go check that out. This is going to be some of the same ones repeated, as well as some other ones. So bear with me and let's get to it. Okay, some of the first ones. Heirlooms. Heirlooms are plants that have been around and have been selectively bred through the years to continue on their traits, from the beginning till now. And yeah, so there is a debate. The minimum amount of time for something to be considered an heirloom is 50 years, which is a lot of years, so keep that in mind. But a lot of people do say that it should be over 100 years. I think a lot of people say that it should have been before anything that was here before World War II should be the only things that are considered heirlooms, which I understand that, but a lot of things are the lowest amount of time that something could be even considered an heirloom is 50 years. So keep that in mind. Heirlooms are not a bad thing. A lot of the times they are your tried and trues, uniform fruits in some cases not. But a lot of the time they're very good, but they also do, in my experience, they do succumb to some garden pest quite quickly. So I grow a few heirlooms, but not a whole lot. The other one is hybrids. Hybrids are not a bad thing. I think people get hybrids and my next topic confused very, very frequently. All a hybrid is a cross between two plants, whether an heirloom and another heirloom, or an heirloom and a hybrid, or even two hybrids. You can save seeds from heirlooms, hybrids, doesn't really matter. But hybrids are not a bad thing. A lot of what I grow are hybrids. I save seeds from everything that I grow almost. And that's nice to be able to do. And there's no problem with it. Absolutely no problem at all. Sometimes, because some of them are not stable, so saving seeds, you're most likely not going to get something that's like the parent plant. Sometimes if they have selective bred and you have made sure that they cannot be cross-pollinated with anything, you can get the same variety over and over, and you yourself can eventually stabilize that if it was not already stabilized before. And that's just a process that you have to go through. Might as well talk about stabilization a little bit. I don't have that written down. I will write it down as something that I talked about, because stabilization is pretty important. Heirlooms are just stabilized plants that they're going to produce the same thing every single time. Hybrids are not. They're not. In some cases they are stable, and they're just not to the point of being able to be called an heirloom. Sometimes, if you're doing your own crosses, I can use my own great-great-grandmother as an example. She crossed a bunch of stuff all the time. It's what she liked doing. She loved crossing things. And she got some pretty cool gourds and everything. And those, if she would have continued to breed them and selecting the one that looks like the parent plant time and time again, she would have stabilized that breed. or that new variety. I don't think there's anything remaining from what she did. There could be, I just don't have access to that, obviously. But I did want to throw stabilization in there, because you can stabilize your own things. I'll use an example. If I were to save seeds, if I had a tomato, if I had 2 tomato varieties, a Too Tasty, which is a purple variety, Saladette size, and Sun Golds, I could cross-pollinate them myself, or something could have happened and the pollinators cross-pollinated them, whichever way. I could, in theory, save seeds from that, continue growing them, and just keep picking ones that look like that next generation, and I have stabilized a new variety. Also, with this, I think a lot of people will get confused. I can buy seeds or saving seeds or whatever. If I plant the seed that I grow, if I'm growing a Too Tasty hybrid, or not, yeah, I think it's a hybrid, a Too Tasty tomato hybrid, that's the seed that I plant in the ground, and it was pure with that breed, then I'm only able to get that plant. The cross-pollination part and getting a new variety from crossing it with a Sun Gold, for example, only happens after the flower is set. So the seeds that are inside of that, if they were cross-pollinated, the seeds that you would plant from that original fruit would be different if they were cross-pollinated. But the plant that you grow from that seed, the original seed, is going to produce from fruit to that seed. It's only getting into doing hybrids, creating hybrids, anything like that, once you start saving seeds, cross-pollinating, and all that. But even then, nothing happens until after you plant that seed and you don't know if it's pure or not. Anyways, next topic, I don't know if I really fully explained that very well. I feel like I did. Probably didn't, though. GMO seeds. Sorry. I look like a hot mess, too. GMO seeds. Short and simple, we, as regular buyers of seed, cannot buy GMO seeds. As simple as that. So if you're worried about something in your garden being a GMO seed, you don't have to worry about it, because it's not even an option. It's not something that can happen. Now, I did mention this in the urban gardening video. If you have a neighbor who grows commercially and who has the papers and gone through that long process of being able to grow GMO seeds for whatever reason, and you are safe, like, if your neighbor who is GMO certified, or however that process works, I really don't know. If your neighbor is growing GMO corn because they filled out the paperwork, they paid X amount of money, whatever, and you're growing, and they're growing corn, I don't remember if I specified that, and you're growing corn and you're saving seeds from that corn, at that point, your corn could be cross-pollinated with that corn. So at that point, that's when I would be like, okay, might not want to save seeds from that particular variety, but it won't affect other things. Like if you're growing tomatoes, save your tomato seeds. But if it's just the corn, don't worry. I wouldn't save those seeds necessarily, but you still could, but you'd also run into that risk. Okay, these next topics I did cover in I believe it was my second kiddie pool video. Determinate and indeterminate. Basics of those. Determinate is basically like a bush. Those two words are very interchangeable. I've heard people use both indeterminate or determinate or bush. Same thing with indeterminate and pole. The determinate just means it's going to set a determined number of fruit, and that is what it is. It's all the fruit that it's going to set. So if you're hard pruning tomatoes, for example, and it's a determinate variety, you're sacrificing fruits. You could be sacrificing your fruits with that. Determinant is really, I've really only heard it commonly used with tomatoes, which those are just your bush varieties. A lot of them on seed packets will say bush. I am growing a determinant / bush type this year, and I'm very interested to see how that goes. And bush is commonly referred to with cucumbers and beans. Beans is the other one. I am growing both of those as well. Dragon tongue bush beans are a bush plant. And there's usually set all their fruit at one time or spread it out over a very short window of time, unlike your indeterminate / your pole varieties. Your indeterminate tomatoes are going to continue setting more and more fruit as long as you provide them with the support, or they're able to continue growing. They're going to continue setting fruit, and you're going to continually be getting a harvest throughout the year. Same thing with commonly pole beans. Same thing with pole beans. You aren't going to be getting, or with pole beans, they're going to continue setting as long as you continue picking the fruit. If you let a bunch of the pods from a pole bean plant go to seed, you're not jeopardizing the harvest, but you could be, because once those are set, they're like, okay, my job here is done, and the plant dies. So the next seeds can go on and create another plant. Those are very loose terms. With the indeterminate and the pole, you will continually be getting a harvest. You won't be getting a big harvest all at one time. Now, if you have tons of plants, yeah, you're going to be getting a lot of harvest at one time. But if you're only growing 4 or 5 plants, you probably won't be getting a whole lot, especially with beans. Tomatoes, on the other hand, you could be getting a lot. I do grow a lot of tomatoes, and let me just tell you, we are overrun with tomatoes a lot of the time, and this year I'm just scaling up, so very worried about that. Okay, these next ones, the next two I'm going to try to just go through really quickly. Annuals, I do have more than just the two, but annuals are a single year / single season plant, and what I mean by single season is just the single year. From all tomatoes are, at least in my area, all tomatoes are annuals. Plant them after the frost, they're going to die with the frost. A lot of things are like that. Basically everything that you plant in a summer garden is an annual. Flowers, annuals, things like that. Perennials are many year plants. Example, my fruit trees on the other side of the fence behind me. Those are perennials. They will come back every single year. They will produce every single year. They don't die off with a frost. I mean, they do in a sense, but they're not completely dead. They're just dormant. So, all of that. Germination. Germination is something that is a good tool. I guess I can just fly through the rest of these. Germination is the act of a seed sprouting. Some people might say that it is from the moment that it first sends out its root. I don't do that. I judge mine off of when the first set of leaves opens up. That to me is germinating. Probably not entirely accurate. It most likely is right when it emerges, but I do base it off of when it first sets out its first leaves. The opening leaves. It's not like the first true leaves. Mulching is something that is completely different than your regular soil. I will be going over that in just a moment. Mulch, you can use larger wood chips, you can use grass clippings, you can use leaves, you can use there are some other things that you can use. Just don't use like rubber or plastic or anything, because that's going to like heat up your soil and dry it out a lot faster. Mulch is here to serve as a holder for the moisture, like a sponge. That's what it's there for. So it's going to hold that moisture in so your plants can continually have access to water throughout the day or days of watering or without water. I don't do a lot of mulching. I am considering doing it this year, but I need to truly see where my planting schedule is going, because I do pretty much pack my beds full, so I don't need a lot of mulch anyways, but I will definitely see what happens. I also water every single day, so that does help with keeping moisture. Sometimes every day when they're little, I water every single day. This also goes into another topic which I did not talk about. Let me write that down. Is deep watering. Deep watering, it's better if you do every 2 to 3 days, doing a really deep water to where you are letting that water just soak all the way through the soil for probably 30 minutes, watering each bed or watering each whatever. Talking mainly in beds. I do water my containers every single day. That is my kiddie pools and my buckets, because they need it. In the heat of the summer, they dry out very, very quickly, and I want to be able to get a harvest from them, obviously. You can do shallow watering, which can lead to hydrophobic soil. Shallow watering, I have done that inadvertently, honestly, with my corn beds. I did not realize that I was not watering as deeply as I should have, and the soil on top became very hydrophobic. So I was watering and watering and watering and watering and watering, and it was getting better, but then we had a really big rain, and it cleared that right up. So I just stayed on top of watering after that point as well. Hardening off. Hardening off is the act of, and this really only applies if you are growing plants indoors or in a covered area, or somewhere that is really, really warm. So indoors or greenhouse or whatever. Hardening off is just basically letting your plants get used to outside, the natural environment, all of that. I made a big mistake, I will tell you. When we had my greenhouse plastic on, or outside layer of the greenhouse on, I had planted corn in there, and I was not thinking about anything at that point. I knew, but not fully. Learning experience is very good, but the corn inside was not used to being hit by wind. It wasn't used to a whole lot of things. They were grown in a good atmosphere. And then when I took it off, we had some wind a few days later, and all of the roots fell down. All of the corn stalks fell over. That first harvest was not a very good harvest because I'd had so many problems with it because of that. So I do encourage you to harden it off as much as possible. You want your plants to be nice and sturdy. What causes plants to be nice and sturdy is going through the elements. If you're growing your plants in a greenhouse, a lot of people will turn on a fan to simulate the wind, so it builds up stronger stems. So yeah. Also, another topic that I want to talk about is leggy plants. Leggy plants just means that your plants were having to reach for the light, which isn't a bad thing, but it's not the best thing. You don't particularly want that to happen, because that means that their stems are not compromised, but they're putting more energy into doing that, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. I have some cabbage starts inside. I actually have some plants right here, and they have gotten a little bit leggy. Not too bad to where I'm really worried about it, but they have gotten leggy. So it's not a bad thing. Just keep an eye on your plants. So yeah. Compost. I use a good mushroom compost. It is very nutrient dense. Compost is really just nutrient dense compost in general, nutrient dense soil in general. You could have worm castings, animal manure, anything that has been composted for the time that it needs to be composted, and it is very nutrient dense for your plants. A lot of heavy feeders like tomatoes and corn require a fresh compost, a bunch of good compost. So on those beds in particular, because I know I am going to be planting in them plants that require more nutrient needs than others, I will add more compost, and I will take some out to be able to add more, because I do grow things like roots that do not require new compost. They don't need that because it's going to produce more greens, more of the top part of the plants than the roots, and you really want roots when you're growing roots, obviously. So that is something that you need to take into consideration. With that, I'm not going to be doing a whole video on soil. I know very little on it. I'm trying to learn more, but I do know that corn and tomatoes are very big feeders, and I do try to accommodate those needs, because I want to be able to grow good corn. I want to be able to grow amazing tomatoes. I love tomatoes. As you guys are going to see, I am starting probably about 60 plants. Not starting them all at the same time. I'm going to be starting probably about 25 to 30 indoors, and then once the soil warms up enough, I will be transplanting them out into my beds and having about 60 tomato plants total. Actually, I take that back. It's going to be about 50 tomato plants total, and I'll have 10 to sell or anything like that. So, yeah. Trellising. You will hear this a lot. Trellising is very, very simple. You could use sticks, for example. You could use an arch trellis, like what I do with the fencing that I have behind me. You can kind of see, see it. And those are really, really good. I will be trying to perfect my arch trellis this year because it keeps bending in. I did not use the correct paneling. You can also do tomato walls. I do tomato walls. I really enjoy the tomato walls because they're nice, and I really enjoy that. So I do look at things like that, and it is a good way to grow up instead of growing out. When you're growing out, you're taking up more space. So growing up is a good thing. Tomatoes also really benefit from growing up, and you're getting more of a harvest that way as well. So sometimes it's necessary, sometimes it's not. But I think this is it for this video. I hope this helped you guys out with some gardening terms. These are things that I say, things that I'm going to be saying a lot coming up. So I want you guys to be prepared for that. I know a lot of people don't know this stuff, so I want you guys to be able to ask questions. There are some things that I didn't put in here that I just couldn't think of. But if you have anything that you can think of and you have questions, please leave them down in the comments below, and I will be sure to get back to you on those, or I can make another video if we get enough. So yeah, this is just a good introduction to gardening terms. It's not designed to stress you out. Gardening should not stress you out. Some things can be a little stressful, but take your time. You guys got this, and I will see you guys in another video, and garden on, y'all.